that are out there of extraterrestrial origin.
A large, hairy creature with arms that hang down beside bore down on its sides.
And I told him my name, and when I told him the name, he said he was called Code.
It was not anything from this earth that I'm quite sure of.
You're listening to the Strangeology Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Foran, and this is your place to explore the weird, strange, and unexplained. From cryptids and creatures, the paranormal, aliens and UFOs, forbidden knowledge, ancient mysteries, conspiracies, and more. All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Before we get started, make sure to follow Strangeology on all of our socials for more content. Links to my Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok communities will be linked in the show notes as always. And make sure to sign up for our newsletter over on strangeology.com for monthly updates, discounts to the shop, and more. And if you're watching this on YouTube today, definitely subscribe to the channel. If you haven't yet, it helps me out so much when you do, helps push it out to more people, and helps us grow this thing to the next level. That's what we're all about, getting these stories of high strangeness out there, all these stories that we love. So follow me there, follow me on the socials. Links will be in the show notes, of course. And for any other updates about the show, upcoming appearances, and all that, stick around until the end. All right, so my guest for today is Nomar Slevik, author, investigator, independent researcher, lifelong experiencer who's spent over 2 decades documenting UFO sightings, alien abductions, encounters with otherworldly beings in the state of Maine, not too far from where Strangeology HQ is. And he's written a number of books, including UFOs over Maine, Otherworldly Encounters. We've also got Granite Skies, The Starborn, and his most recent effort being Humanoid Encounters. Nomar's work dives headfirst into the high strangeness that surrounds UFOs and this phenomenon of this otherworldly intelligence that seems to surround us. And his storytelling and work into these topics shows that often the truth is far stranger than we can ever imagine. So thank you so much for joining me today, Nomar. Glad to see you again. We met a few years ago at 4TN Fest in Maine. That was one of the first events I ever did, actually. So yeah, glad we could reconnect. And we're gonna get into a whole bunch of stuff, I'm sure. But I gotta know about this UFO sighting that you had when you were a kid. You were 4 years old? And so this obviously was probably the spark, like for so many of us, that caused us to look into this kind of stuff. What happened with this sighting?
Yeah, well, first of all, that was an amazing intro, so thank you. But what happened was my mother had put me to bed, and a loud bang woke me up in the middle of the night. And, I'm 4 or 5 years old, the middle of the night. I don't know if that's 9 p.m. or 3 a.m., but my eyes pop open and I'm kind of like looking around for some sort of explanation. And I start to hear these light taps at my window, and my eyes go over there and I realize it's rain. And then the sky lights up and I was like, oh, thunder and lightning storm. Thunder must have woke me up. So now I lean up on my bed and I'm, watching the storm. And at the time we lived right at the tip of Maine. We lived right along the St. John River. So I can look out my bedroom window and I can see the St. John River raging below.
Oh, wow.
And I'm seeing, the sky light up still. And after just a moment or so, there was this really disturbing lightning bolt. And if I were to ask you to draw it, you would draw this jagged yellow line. And it was stuck in a cloud. It was so weird. And there was a halo around it, and there was electricity coming off of it, and there was more booms associated with it. And at that age, I knew you saw lightning only just a split second. So it was confusing and weird, but not necessarily scary. And, I don't really know what happened after that other than falling back asleep. I wake up the next morning and I go to the bathroom. When I'm done, I leave the bathroom and I'm walking towards my bedroom and I can see out my window and it's still there. And I know this isn't right. So I go downstairs and I get my dad and I bring him upstairs to show him. And I'm telling him about the storm and all that stuff. And when we look, it's gone. And he was doing the parent thing, just kind of like patting my head, being like, yeah. But I must have been very animated because he had to like kneel down, get on my level, hands on my shoulders. And he's like, buddy, it didn't even rain last night. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So that's basically the whole story. But 2 weeks later, I was woken up again in the middle of the night. And this time it was my dad. And he brings me downstairs and I can see my mother, shoving my sister into her winter clothes. And then she does the same thing to me. And then my dad scoops me up and we all walk outside. And this is Maine in the winter, so it's super cold. And I immediately like put my head in his chest and he keeps telling me, buddy, you got to look up. You got to look up. So I finally look and it was the Northern Lights. It's the only time I saw him. We had 800 opportunities in 2024 to see it. It was always cloudy here. It was very frustrating to me. So that was the only time I've seen him. And I think what happened was those two incidents occurring so close together at such a young age developed some sort of like core memory. And it's like strange stuff happens up there, so pay attention. And I kind of have been ever since. And like you said right at the start, that was the spark.
Yeah, that's a super interesting story, Nomar. I mean, when you see stuff like that, especially at a young age, I mean, it really does form this core memory, and your understanding of the world at that age, of course, is very limited. Sure. But you kind of have a pretty good grasp on how things work and what's in the sky
about weather
and
I mean, you don't know the intricacies, but I understand rain, weather, lightning.
Exactly. Yeah. And also quick shout out to the constantly cloudy skies in New England.
Yeah.
Whenever the Northern Lights happen. I think I've only ever seen them once or twice myself in Vermont, and it's just always frustrating.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, throughout your life, have there been any additional times where you've seen UFOs or had any other paranormal encounters?
Yeah. I wrote a book about a guy named Mike Stevens, and he's out of New Hampshire, and it's a book called Grant Skies. And he runs a support group for people who think they've been abducted. And he very much calls them experiencers. And I really wasn't aware of that term other than like old world kind of like UFO stuff, in the 60s, talking about experiencers. But Mike was using that word synonymous with abductees. And that was the word I was used to. But I like experiencers, and I like his philosophy with how he helps the people. And he helped to instill in me that I too am an experiencer without the abduction piece, but I'm still, I still see things. So in my lifetime, starting at 4 or 5 years old, I've seen about 14 UFOs. But when I say UFOs, I do mean the actual acronym unidentified flying object. They could be man-made. I just don't know what the hell they are. I would say out of those 14, it's certainly possible that maybe half of them is just something I couldn't identify at the time, but it was man-made. But I do say there's a good 5 or 7 of them where I don't know what the hell they were. And I think the next most significant sighting I had was in 2007-ish in Freeport, Maine, which is in the southern part of the state. And I had gotten home from work, and it was again the early part of the year, so it was still dark earlier. And I had gotten home probably 4:30, 5 o'clock from work, and about 5:30 or so, my roommate shows up. And I hear them come in, slam the door, and then like run up the stairs. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, why are they like, running inside and coming upstairs? And then they burst into my computer room and music room and stuff. And they're like, there's a UFO outside right now, and it's hovering over the neighbor's house. And I'm like, what? And, this person's typically a skeptic, first of all. So that surprised the hell out of me. So I run downstairs and I go on the porch. And sure enough, across the street, who they were actually my landlord, but across the street above their house, maybe a football field's length away above the house, were these two red lights with a white light in the middle, just hovering there. And it looked as big as a car, what people are seeing as drones right now, like it was, it looked significant. And it was completely silent because we're not that far. I'm probably half a football field length away from their house. And so I have one of those old Nokia brick phones, and I pull that out and I take a picture, and I just get like this squiggly red line in a sea of blackness. I'm like, all right, well, that was stupid. But so I'm watching the thing and it's hovering, and just after, less than a minute, it moves up diagonally, however many feet, because I can't tell. And then it stops again. And I'm like, okay, what's going to happen next? And then just a moment after that, it starts moving at a level trajectory, kind of paralleling the road. And so now I'm like, all right, I got to go follow this thing. So I get in my car and I immediately lose sight of it because I had to, my car was parked facing me. So I had to get in and back out, and I can't keep my eye on it. So I get down to the road and it's gone. So about a mile up the road, there's this bed and breakfast, and there's this huge field right next to it. And I'm like, okay, I'll pull over there and it'll come into view. Big view of the sky and the ocean's right there. I have to see it. So I park there. My head's on a swivel. Nothing. I never see it again. So I get home and I ask my roommate about it, and they're like, yeah, I was driving home and it almost seemed like it was following me. It was just off the treetops. And I felt like this presence, this thing, like when this is what they're telling me, when you feel like somebody's watching you and you just turn and look and you see someone's looking at you. She's like, it felt like that. And they look up and they see this thing following the car. And then when they got home and parked, they turned around and looked, and it was hovering over the house. Really strange. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, you said, 2007.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's kind of pre-drones, really, at least.
Yeah, at least commercial,
ones.
Available to people like us.
Yeah, but if it was government or something, why would they be flying over your landlord's place in Freeport, Maine?
Yeah. And to play devil's advocate to myself, there's an area called Brunswick Naval Air Station that's nearby. It was defunct at the time, but there were still some, I think, some Coast Guard activities that would happen there. Now it's completely shut down military-wise, and it's all like industrial businesses. But so that's always a possibility. But like you just said, what the hell are they doing hovering over my landlord's house?
Right.
Because it wasn't so high that it was like celestial. And is that over the house, or is it, 28 miles, that way over the water? No, it was very obvious it was over the house, So that would make sense to me anyway. But
yeah, that is super interesting.
Yeah.
To see something so close and yeah, that's always a wild experience for sure.
Yeah. And I got to say, I was a little bit more scared with that one. I'm obviously an adult at that point. And I'm like, this is really close. And, all the classic things are happening. It's not moving. It's silent. It's at night. I'm by myself, and it was a little unnerving. But as soon as it moved, I was like, I know I got to go after it. I can't just, let this go. So
yeah,
I'm glad I did that, but it sucks I didn't see it again.
Yeah, that's definitely frustrating for sure. Do you think there may have been any kind of connection between that and what you saw when you were a kid, or do you think they're unrelated?
I generally walk around with the feeling that they're unrelated, but when I talk to somebody like Mike or maybe another experiencer that I'm like interviewing for a book or something, and I'm trying to be relatable to them and sharing my own stories with them, it comes up more that maybe they are related. Because that's certainly a possibility too. Again, it's not something I walk around typically thinking of. that I've been followed my whole life by the same thing. I just think I pay attention a lot more than the average person because I'm actively looking for things,
Right. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense for sure. For sure. Yeah. Now, so when you're working on your books, how do you really, approach it? You interview people. Do you kind of go about it more as, you're a UFO investigator, or are you an objective journalist? Are you kind of just combining, different methodologies to kind of,
I would say I'm combining.
Done?
Yeah, I'm combining different methodologies. Because I am a UFO researcher, but I'm also a human being, and there's been a lot of trauma in my life and things that surround that with anxiety and depression and introverted and suicidal ideation. And while the catalyst for those were not UFO related, people I talk to, their catalyst for those feelings are UFO related. And that kind of puts us on an even playing field. And it comes up a lot more often than you would think. And so what it comes down to when I'm talking to somebody, they very much know that I'm looking to document this as fully as possible and present it to the public in either a book or a talk or a podcast or something. So they know that going into it. But all of that aside, I am there as a non-judgmental, kind ear. And if throughout any of the process, even to the point where I'm almost about to hit publish, the metaphorically speaking, if they don't want that story to be featured, it gets cut, no matter how much I love it, because that's what you have to do for people, So it's very much about the experiencer for me. And if I can just be kind, non-judgmental, and let them be heard, which is the biggest deal in my opinion, I think that's the best thing that I can do. And even if I don't get to put it out publicly, it's still documented as a matter of historical record within my files, and that sits well with me too. So
yeah, you certainly have to respect people's stories and their wishes. It's a kind of a how would you word it? Almost like it's a reality breaking, world bending subject, because a lot of people who are experiencers are often ridiculed.
I feel like that's getting better now, but that's generally speaking. These are people that still have to go to work, still deal with their family, and it's not a thing that's always accepted amongst your immediate community, So if I'm the one person that they've confided in, or, however that works, then, I want to respect that as much as possible,
Yeah. That's definitely very important for sure. You're doing great work out there. And it's good to have people like you who are, doing the groundwork. And speaking of groundwork, your latest effort, Humanoid Encounters, recently came out. And this is kind of like a chronicle of creatures and entities that have been seen in Maine. What are some of the most interesting stories that you came across when you were working on this book?
Well, first of all, I think I'm playing a little fast and loose with Humanoid Encounters because I have like a whole ghost section, and if they were described in a human manner, cool, it's going in the book,
Yeah, sure.
So just to put that out there, but yeah, there was lots of crazy things that I came across. You have the regular stuff, I say regular because we're desensitized at this point, but Bigfoot, Dogman, even black-eyed kids. But some of the more strange stuff was, in what I was really looking for, were like pale crawlers, which is still a frightening thing to me. Also, amphibious aliens, if you will, or amphibious creatures. I can't necessarily say they're aliens, but, like the Loveland Frogman is like a beloved story to me in the paranormal lore of it all. And so I was searching high and far for a frogman story from Maine. And boy, oh boy, it wasn't until, and I've been working on this book, off and on for a couple of years, and it wasn't until literally Thanksgiving Day of last year when I found the Frogman story from Maine. And it came to me from another local author, a local author to Maine, who has since retired. I don't know the gentleman at all, but he has this one famous book in my world, this one famous book that features Colonel Buck's grave on the cover, which is a famous gravestone in Bucksport, Maine, which has a witch's foot on it. And it's this supposed curse that happened during the Salem witch trial years and blah, blah, blah. There's not a whole lot actually to it. It's more lore than real, but it's a famous landmark, and that's what was on the cover. And I remember seeing that at Mr. Paperback, which isn't around anymore, but I remember seeing that and flipping through it. I'm like, oh, I got to get this book sometime. And he has since retired, and for a while he had a YouTube channel. So I'm searching everywhere, Frogman, Maine, and you know how you do all the random searches on Google trying to find something. And I come across his YouTube page, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy with the book. And all right, well, what the hell has he got to say? So I'm listening to one of his YouTube videos, and he goes, and this book has, you know, it's got blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And also, you know, the Frogmen of Maine. And I'm like, whoa, what? First of all, you said that way too casually. Second of all, Frogmen of Maine? So I rewound it, you know, I double tapped my screen, went back 20 seconds, and he's like, blah, 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 Frogmen of Maine. I'm like, okay, I got to find this story. So I had to find his book because that's what it was in. I find the book, and I see the book that he referenced for his story. So then I went and tracked down that book. And that was a book that was put out in the early 1900s by a gentleman named George Cleveland. And it was called Maine in Verse and Story. So it includes poems and stories, all kind of mixed mashed together. And there's this one story that sticks out like a sore thumb. Out of all the different names and that are given, it's definitely of that time frame of the early 1900s, except for one story, and it's called The Remick Case. It's a very modern title, the something case, you know, and it's Remick, which is the last name of this person in this story. So the story goes, there's this gentleman, 25 years old. His name is Silas Remick. And he lived in western northern Maine. And he had a homestead with his family, father, mother, siblings, and his father dies. So now he's the head of the household. He's responsible for all the stuff now. And there's this one lake called Devil's Lake that he was always told never to go to. The whole community doesn't go there, but he's always heard it's good fishing. Yeah, of course. And the name, of course. But he's always heard it's great fishing. You know, he wants to really provide. I'm going to that lake and I'm going to catch a bunch of fish. So he does. And sure enough, he catches a whole bunch of fish. And he's like, yeah. So he goes home. His mother's like, I can't believe you went there, but wow, look at all this trout. This is amazing. So a couple days go by and he kind of can't stop thinking about the lake. And he's like, all right, I got to go back, but not right now. I got stuff to do. So like 4 days go by and he's like, I got to go. So he goes and he catches a whole bunch more fish and then he comes home. And then he's like, I can't stop thinking about the lake. Why am I obsessed with this lake? And then he goes the next day and then the next day. And it gets to the point where his mother's like, dude, you're, you know, shirking your responsibilities here. You got to stop going. And he's like, you're right. My bad. I need to do better. He doesn't. He immediately goes fishing the next day. On that particular day, he's up there and there's this mountainous area that's not too far away. Excuse me, not too far away. And it's got like this cliff ridge on it. And he can see that there's two people standing up on this ridge. And he's like, why do they look so weird? But they're just a little bit too far away. But he's like, there's something about them that feels off. But they're keeping their distance. I'm just going to keep fishing. So he does that. Everything seems fine. He goes back the next day. They're a little bit closer. And he's like, God, they look so weird. There's something about their heads, you know, but again, they're just a little too far away. But he's like, maybe it's some sort of indigenous tribe that I'm not aware of. So he keeps fishing. He goes back the next day and he's walking his path to the fishing spot, and all of a sudden these two entities kind of jump up in the path in front of him. And he described them as bipedal, like 6 foot tall, but they had heads as frogs. That was the only way he could describe them. Their skin was green like a frog, scaly, and they apprehended him. And he was never heard from again. So 5 years go by. His poor mother passes away, never knowing what happened to the son. So this New Yorker moves up to Maine, and he buys this homestead. It's not said that it's their homestead, but it's kind of implied a little bit. And he buys this homestead, and he hires a local to help him with fishing and putting the homestead together and all this stuff. And this New York guy is really interested in the paranormal, and he likes to talk to his Maine friend about it. This guy he hired, they became fast friends, and the Maine guy doesn't really care for the paranormal. So they're kind of argue about it quite a bit. And he goes, there's got to be something local here. Like, tell me about something here. And he's like, oh, well, there's Devil's Lake and what happened to Silas Remick. And he's like, well, what's that story? That's what I just told you. So the New Yorker's like, you dare to go up to the lake? If you don't believe in the paranormal, you shouldn't be scared to go up there. And the Maine guy was like, yeah, cool, let's go. And so they make a plan to go the next day. So they're up there, they're in the canoe, and they're like, oh my God, this is beautiful. I can't believe people don't come here. It's got a bad reputation for no reason. So while they're canoeing and everything, there's this splash that happens in front of them. And they're like, what the hell's that? And they look and they see this bottle jar thing bobbing in the water. So they get the paddle and they pull it in and they open it up, and there's a piece of paper in there. And they can tell something's written on it, but it's all wet. So they go to shore, they lay it out on a rock, it dries a bit, and they start reading it. And it's a letter written by Silas Remick. And in the letter, Silas says that when he was apprehended, he immediately passed out. And he woke up, and he was enclosed in this room. And his breathing was labored, and his body felt really weird. And then he realized he was underwater. And he was like in a jail cell underwater. And it's got a window, and he's looking out at, and he sees hundreds of these frog people. And it's like they're living in their own metropolis underwater, and businesses going on. And he's, stuck in this jail. Next thing he knows, the door opens. 2 of them come in. They bring him somewhere. Anytime they interact with him, he passes out. It's like they do something to him so he's not aware. And they've also done something to him so he can breathe underwater. So they take him places a lot of the times. And he said sometimes when he has some slight awareness, he can see a brightness above him. And he thinks that's when he's getting closer to the surface. So he had the idea to write this letter and to let the bottle go when he can see light. So he does. And it's the whole story I just told you. And they're assuming that they were actively moving Silas at this time when they heard the splash and this jar came up. The story's a bit more involved than that, but that's the short version, if you can believe it, of the frog people of Maine. And I just found it fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard of that. And anyone I've ever run with, the frogmen are like Ohio.
Yeah.
The Loveland frogmen, right?
Yeah.
But that's wild. That kind of reminds me of hearing about being from Vermont, hearing about dogman stories not too far from where I live that happened around the turn of the 20th century.
Oh wow.
Out near, I think it's there's some lumberjacks were out near Lake Groton Lake, somewhere around. It's now like a state park, and one of them ran into a dog man, and he like went missing in the woods for a couple of days. I guess he came out and he's like, I saw this like werewolf creature. It's like, it's super interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's was that story, more, do you think, kind of like a work of fiction or folklore? Do you think it was based on any true accounts, or?
That's a good question, and I've thought a lot about that, and I couldn't find the names of the New Yorker and the Mainer in any other records. So that kind of tends to lead towards lore. However, there was a first and last name, which kind of lends towards maybe there's something to it. Now, the way it's written, I know the way I told it kind of sounds like lore, but the way it's written really sounds like a true account. And it sticks out like a sore thumb amongst these poems and these other obvious stories of lore from Maine. So really, I don't know why this strange story is kind of like stuck in the middle of this like 1904 book, and it kind of has a little bit of a modern title compared to the other things. The other titles and the other stories and poems in the book is a lot more prose than like a nonfiction story, but this very much reads like a nonfiction story juxtaposed to all the prose in the book. It's interesting.
Yeah. And, it kind of makes me think, with all the talk recently about, the aliens are from the oceans, and there's that story of Lake Baikal in Russia with the humanoid underwater entities that like scientists, divers encountered, and all of that. So, it's like, is there a connection? And maybe, a frog-like head could be equated to your classic gray alien, big eyes, smooth skin that looks almost amphibious a little bit.
Yeah. And
who knows? Yeah.
Much like me at 5 years old, seeing a lightning bolt stuck in a cloud, like that's how my young mind perceived it, because I didn't have anything else to compare it to. So, was I actually seeing a craft? So, use that same logic with Silas, and that's just the nearest thing he could compare it to, like you said, with the big eyes and stuff, like, oh, they look like frog people.
Right. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Why do you think, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off there. I was going to ask, it seems like there's a lot of activity in Maine. Do you have any ideas or theories as to, why Maine seems to be kind of a hot spot for a lot of this activity, UAPs, humanoids, whatever?
I think I actually don't think Maine is very special. I think if there was somebody like me in New Hampshire, which I'm sure there is, and I probably know them, I'm just not thinking right now, but and somebody or like you're the one in Vermont, and there's, for every state there's somebody, and they know all the strange stories. So when you say them all together, it's like, your state sounds like a hot spot. And, I think every state probably has that, and so I really don't think we're special. I just pay attention a lot, and I am digging and digging and digging for stories, all the time. Case in point, this other story, it's from 1965, and I didn't find it until 2023. And I've been doing UFO research. I'm on newspapers.com all the time, and this story comes across about this incident that happened at a school in Maine. And again, this was 1965, during the day, during class. There's this young kid, he's like 10, 12 years old. His name's Paul, and the teacher is in the middle of a lesson, and Paul starts to hear this beeping sound coming from outside. And he's like, what the hell's that? And he kind of gets obsessed with it. So he just gets up in the middle of class during a lesson and walks to the window, and he can see this black dot out in the sky, and he like audibly gasps, and all the other kids are like, what the hell is Paul doing, and what's he gasping at, and the teacher's like, oh no. So all the kids get up, they walk to the window, the teacher's like behind them, and they can see this black dot. They're all hearing the beeping now, and they're seeing this black dot, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And what's happening is it's getting closer. And as it gets close enough, they can see that it's actually this silver oval thing with a black bottom. And the silver oval thing had this antenna sticking out of the front of it, and it had this light on top, and the light was blinking. And every time the light blinked, there was a beeping sound. So this thing gets so close to the school. They're on the second floor, and it literally flies by the window. And it's descending as it's doing this. And it appears to land behind a house that's near the school. So the kids are freaking out. The teacher's like, what did I just see? So she goes and gets the principal. She tells the principal what just happened. The principal's like, all right, sequester the kids. Like literally put them in individual rooms. I want to talk to everybody, and I don't want them talking to each other. So he talks to every kid, basically interviews them. What did you see? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. And it's basically the story I told you. So he calls the newspaper, the local paper, and he asks, hey, has there been any UFOs or strange things in the sky reported? And then the paper goes, yeah, that's really strange that you call. In the town of Oakland, which is literally the next town away from where this happened, there was a railroad worker outside, and he heard a beeping sound. So he looked up, and he saw this black dot fly over. A couple minutes later, heard more beeping, a little bit louder, and he saw a bigger black dot. Apparently, this happened like 15 times, and every time he looked up, it was getting bigger and bigger, the beeping louder and louder, and he said underneath of it looked like a teacup. And that's basically his story. So the reporter said, can I come to the school and talk to the kids? And the principal said, yeah. So the reporter comes, and the principal had, I think, 4 or 6 of the kids that could tell the best version of the story ready for the reporter. They told them the story, and then the reporter asked them to draw what the UFO looked like. So they did so on the chalkboard, and there's like 4 kids that have their picture next to the chalkboard drawing of the UFO, and it made it into the paper the following day. And the story is what I just told you that was in the paper. Now, this story went nowhere. It immediately died that day, it felt like. There was no follow-ups. The police never got involved. There's nothing MUFON related to it, which would be the closest thing during that time frame. The Center for UFO Studies, none of it. NICAP, none of it. So it's just this piece of unexplained story in this local newspaper from Maine. Now, an article right next to that UFO article was a meteor article. And I feel like that was put there on purpose. And people had reported seeing a lot of meteors. There was a meteor shower. And they talked to like the university person who knows about that stuff, the science teacher over there, professor. And so they had some quotes from him about the meteors, nothing about the UFOs. But in my opinion, what might have happened was they read the UFO story, the meteor story is right next to it, and the townspeople are like, oh, that's what the kids saw, which obviously makes no sense, but I just don't get why it died, why it went nowhere, and I didn't uncover it, for 40 plus years later. It's so strange. It's literally not anywhere. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard of that story, and it's funny you talk about the all the kids, seeing it and then drawing it on the chalkboard. It reminds me a lot of like the Ariel School case from Zimbabwe.
I think the first thing I said when I found that to myself was, oh my God, there's an Ariel School thing that happened here. This is amazing.
Yeah. And I also wonder, the principal separating all the kids and interviewing them, would he have tried to contact the authorities or something? And maybe it sounds like there was a cover up.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's names was used, which is amazing. And I reached out to the Paul witness who it might have been him. I obviously don't know if it was, but I never got a response back, which is too bad. But But the principal teacher had since passed away, so I couldn't talk to them. But yeah, it's so strange to me how it came out in the paper. There was no follow up. I looked, weeks after, and there was just nothing. Strange.
Yeah, that is very strange.
And where the principal was so proactive, like you were saying, he's just so proactive, and then it just dies, so they're probably like, stop.
Yeah. I wonder if, if there was any kind of Men in Black encounter, maybe they came by and were like, hey, don't talk about this or else.
Yeah.
Those, famous cases of, Men in Black encounters.
Yeah.
Of which I'm pretty sure I did an episode on Men in Black very early on in this podcast. And I'm pretty sure one of the major cases that I looked into happened in Maine.
It did. Yeah. Dr. Herbert Hopkins in Old Orchard Beach, Maine, in I think 1976. And that's a really interesting story, like the full story of it. Most people familiar with ufology know the initial story, and I'll just tell that really quick.
Sure.
Hopkins gets a phone call from somebody claiming to be from like the New Jersey UFO, organization, which didn't exist. And they said, hey, we want to talk to you about the David Stevens case, which was a case he was working on at that time. And we want to talk to you about it. And he was like, sure, okay. When do you want to do this? And they're like, right now. And so the person just oddly hangs up the phone, and next thing you know, he sees somebody walking up his porch steps. And this is 1976 in Maine. The closest payphone was like downtown, and the doctor was a few miles away. So he's like, how the hell did this, what? Okay. So he turns on the porch light, and this stranger knocks on his door, and Hopkins is like, this is normal, and like opens the door, lets the guy in. And he just really feels compelled to. It's almost like Jedi mind trick that's happening to him. And the gentleman gets inside, and he looks really strange. The classic Men in Black, the alien version of Men in Black, not like the government version of Men in Black, but, devoid of hair, wearing all black, acting really strange, acting robotic. At one point, he wipes his mouth, and a redness comes on his hands like he was wearing lipstick or something. So he proceeds to basically threaten Hopkins about the David Stevens case, which was a very famous abduction case that happened just the year prior. And Hopkins was hypnotizing this David Stevens kid and getting a bunch of information about his abduction. And he threatened him and told him, you're not going to do that anymore. And he's like, in your pocket, there's 2 coins. There's a penny and, a dime or whatever it was. And pull one of them out. So he does, and it's the penny. And he goes, watch the penny. Or it might have been a nickel. But anyways, watch the coin. And so Hopkins does, and it gets fuzzy and blurry, and then it disappears from his hand. And the Man in Black says, no one is ever going to see that coin again. And he goes, that's what happened to Barney Hill's heart. And that's what will happen to you if you don't stop this. Of course, we know now that Barney Hill's heart was, in fact, still in his body because there was an autopsy and all that stuff. So that was just a veiled threat. But the parlor trick thing worked on Hopkins, and it scared him. And so the gentleman eventually excused himself and left. And he actually kind of seemed run down like a robot. And he leaves, and Hopkins is scared. So he destroys all of his stuff having to do with the David Stevens case. And then his family comes home because they had went and watched a movie. They come home and they're like, why are all the lights on? Why is the gun out? Like, what's happening? And so he tells them what happened, and he was really scared. That's the initial story. That's what's in the Time Life. That's what's in, if there's a segment on Men in Black, that's the story they tell. But it goes on longer. A few weeks later, they were visited by these 2 other strange Men in Black people, and they acted just as weird as this other guy. It was a man and woman, and at some point during the conversation, the Men in Black was referring to his female woman in black, and was like, is this how you fondle women? Is this how it works? And was like starting to touch the female. And they're like, whoa, what? No, this isn't what you do in public. And he's like, oh, okay. And stops. And there was just such a lot of weird things like that. So anyways, that ends. They leave. Now, during this whole time, there was a nephew that was visiting Herbert Hopkins, and his name was Howard Hopkins. And Howard was a teenager at the time, and he was staying with the Hopkins family during the summer when this happened. And he says it's all BS. He's like, Herbert Hopkins, who was a doctor, he was a well-respected doctor in town. He was also a drunk and really liked writing sci-fi pulp stories. And this is just a story that he came up with. Now, by the time I got my hands on that part of the story, Howard had passed away. And he passed away kind of young. I think he was under 60. But his widow was still alive. So I contacted her and I talked to her about Herbert and Howard and this discrepancy and stuff. And she says Howard, her husband, who has since passed, is the only person in the family that didn't believe Herbert, the doctor. Everybody else believes him that the Men in Black did visit, including herself. And she's like, you can put that in your book if you want. Like I love him dearly, still do to this day, but I believed Herbert and not my husband. So, that's the, again, shortened version, but elongated version of the Herbert Hopkins case. And, I'm the only person that has put this hoax piece of it into my book. So it's kind of out there for people to find, there hasn't been, any backlash or really anybody following up on it. I still only ever hear that first part, but there's this whole other thing that happened with, a potential hoax. And I just think it's fascinating. And, my personal beliefs aside, you got to include that piece of it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super interesting to hear the extended version of that story. And it certainly is important to include all angles and just so people get the whole story.
And I'd like to present stuff as unbiasedly as possible. I do have a soft spot for some of the main stories where I really do believe it actually happened. But again, I try to be as unbiased as possible and let the story speak for itself, because it's not about me and, my beliefs. It's the story.
Yeah. Have there ever been any cases or sightings in your work, your travels, that kind of shocked or challenged your assumptions or understanding of stuff?
Yeah. There's this one story. I don't know why it sticks with me, and maybe you can tell me after I tell it, but it's a short story. It's really strange. It's very recent. I think it was like 2018. I don't know why it sticks with me so much, but there was this woman. It's 7:00. It's like during the summer, so it's still kind of light out. And she's outside on the phone, I think talking to her father. Her boyfriend's inside the house somewhere, and her dog is like with her outside. So she's having this conversation, and she notices that the dog is like staring straight at something. And she's like, what the hell's wrong with you? And then she starts to hear this like guttural like growl coming from its chest, but it's not like on the surface yet. And she's like, what is happening? What are you looking at? And so she follows his gaze, and she sees this alien, classically described gray alien, but one of the tall ones, crouched down next to a tree, and it's looking directly at the dog, and the dog is looking directly at it. And so now, and the woman's like, I got to call you back. So like she gets off the phone. She's like, oh my God, what's happening? And her actions at that point, I think, triggered something in the dog. Like, it's okay for you to like go after this thing now. Yeah. So the alien immediately stands up. The dog goes after it, and it's barking like just vicious, like rah, 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 barking at this alien. And the alien starts running away. And she said when it stood up, it was like 7 feet tall. And as it's running, it starts disappearing. And it starts disappearing from the feet up. So at one point, she's seeing just a torso running, and it keeps looking back at the dog and then keeps running and continues to disappear until it's completely gone. the dog stops right in his tracks once it disappears, but he's continuing to bark, bark, bark. And she's like, what the hell just happened? And so she goes inside. She tells her boyfriend. They go outside to see if there's any like footprints or anything to, you know, show that it had been there. They don't see anything. But that's the story. And it's just freaking weird. And, you know, an alien in mid-stride, you know, like cloaking itself or whatever the hell happened. I don't know, but it stuck with me. And it's creepy, and it's got this weird like Twilight Zone vibe to it. You know, I'm just picturing it's just a summer evening. I'm sure it's nice out. She's outside. It's warm, talking with her dad on the phone. The dog's just chilling. Then all of a sudden, the strangest thing in the world happens, and it disrupts everything. You know, her follow-up was not more to the story, but just I constantly think about this. I close my eyes and I see it. Like, it still freaks her out. Yeah.
I mean, you know, reality breaking event, you know, like what was the alien doing there? Was it there to observe? Was it going to abduct them? Could it have been a pale crawler? I mean, those things are said to be like 7 feet tall, and they like skulk around sometimes in neighborhoods, and they kind of look like aliens. I mean, I got to tell you, the Dover Demon, I feel like that was one of the earliest pale crawler, you know, stories. And for some reason, it's very short, but it still reads and sounds like a pale crawler. But you know, crazy. It really does. Yeah, for sure. No, it's these. That story gave me the heebie-jeebies for sure. It sticks with me. Like it caught me off guard. Like, I'm reading the original report, and I'm like, geez, I'm scared. What, you know, I got to talk to this lady, you know, and just it's a creepy little story. But again, it's super short. It's in the middle of like a longer story that I'm telling, but I'm like, yo, check this out really quick, you know? And you know, and it just kind of comes in and punches you. And so I think that's one of the creepiest, you know, genre bending ones, you know, because it's very sci-fi, and she's seen this with her own eyes, and I just can't even imagine, you know. I can only relate it to watching a movie, you know, like. Yeah, I know. And seeing the thing, I can only assume it was cloaking. If the dog was still sensing its presence, it was still there. You know, there's, I mean, certainly been sightings like the Musconacon. I'm totally mispronouncing that, but the Mantis Man of New Jersey. There was a guy who saw this, like the mantis being in this river, and it just like cloaked and disappeared. So it's like, you know, any technology that's advanced enough looks like magic, right? Absolutely. Now, you mentioning Mantis Man reminds me that we have an insect-like story here, and that's another short one. Yeah. So I talked to this wonderful, wonderful family. It's a family that came together, and it's adopted children, and it's just this house full of love. And there's these 3 kids. And they're still very young, but I think this was just like 2 years ago when I interviewed them all. But the kid, one of the kids, he was a boy, or is a boy. He's sitting with his mom one day, and he was like, "Mom, something really strange happened yesterday." And she's like, "What?" You know, because she's like, I spent the whole friggin' day with him. Like, what the hell happened? But apparently it was during like nap time. And he goes, a really big bug came into the bedroom and picked me up, bit me on the inside of my stomach, and then put me back down and left. And she's like, "What?" And so he kind of tells her the story again, and she's trying to ask some questions, and you know, with their initial encounter. Now I'm there hearing this, and I'm throwing a bunch of questions at her, and the more, you know, the little bit longer portion of that story is this thing picked him up, and he doesn't really remember what happened. He just remembers being picked up. There's a little bit of pain in his belly, and so he kind of thought that was a bite, and then this thing put him back. And this was the middle of the day. And he said that when the thing left his room, it was walking backwards out of the room
which is creepy in its own way. And it got to the threshold of the door, turned around, went into the hallway, looked back one more time, and then went down the stairs. So she started showing him this picture book of insects, on like what it looked like, type of thing. And he was like, no, none of that. No. And the closest thing that she found was a large ant. But that's basically the story. So fast forward like a month. Completely unrelated. I've got some really bad tires. I just failed inspection on my car. But I know in the same town that these people happen to live in, which is like 25 minutes from me, in the same town, there's a discount tire place. It's the closest one, I would have had to have gone like an hour and a half longer. So I go to this guy's place about a month later, not even thinking about any of this stuff. And he's putting, new tires on my car. And I'm sitting, and he's got mechanics that do it, and he's sitting in the room, and you sit in the room with him. That's the waiting room. Like his office and the waiting room's the same room.
Right.
And he's like, so what do you do? And I'm like, here we go. I'm a writer. Oh, what do you write? And I tell him nonfiction books about the UFO phenomenon. Really? I got a story for you. I'm like, oh, I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
So he lives down the road, not even a mile from these people. He goes, I'm outside. It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm having my coffee and I'm just tinkering around in the garage and the door's wide open. And I start to hear like motorcycles or something. But it's coming from a weird direction. It's coming from the field behind my house. And there's no trail there or anything where there should be something motorized. So he steps out of the garage and he's got his coffee and he's hearing it get closer and closer. So finally it comes into view. And he says he sees these two insect-like beings riding these hover motorcycles. It's, I'm picturing it right out of Star Wars, you know what I mean? And they hum right by. They pay him no mind. And they're 30 feet away from him. And he sees both of them go by. They're full size, 5-6 foot tall things sitting on hovering motorcycle things. And they go right by him. And this is a Mainer, like you saying a Vermonter, like, what I mean? It's a local, older fella, he's probably 70 something. And, he's got country music on the whole time in his office waiting room thing. And, I hear him take phone call after phone call of people ordering tires. This isn't a guy that seems to make stuff like that up. There's no books or posters or anything indicating that he's really into sci-fi movies or anything. It's such a random, weird story. And it happened literally less than a mile from where this kid said he was taken by an insect-like being. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's very interesting, especially since, this is just a random person that you were, giving your business to, of course, getting some tires, and then he, unrelated, doesn't know that you've looked into this other encounter story.
Yeah.
That's there's something there for sure.
Yeah.
Ant people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. That just reminded me. Did you see the thing the other day? There's some company that actually made like hover bikes. So there's going to be like hover bikes. Yeah. No, that's everyone's all excited about them, but yeah, it's wild times we live in.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think these entities are? I mean, obviously there's so many different options, but what do you lean towards?
Whichever way the wind blows on any given week, my opinion changes as I get more information, and my opinion can change as information like changes or alters or can go completely backwards. I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe it is this or blah, blah, blah. So I don't have any answers, but what I lean towards, at least right now, is probably like interdimensional. I'm kind of obsessed with that right now. It's very fascinating to me. And I guess that kind of also falls into ultra-terrestrial, at least the Keel version of ultra-terrestrial. And so I think it's coming from within, or not necessarily another planet within the solar system, but in a different reality that either mirrors ours, or, you know, all realities are infinite, you know, depending on what theories. But I kind of mix all those theories up in my head because I'm not very smart. And I think, at least right now, that it's probably interdimensional, not from our dimension, but they can come here for whatever reason. They've figured that out wherever they are, and they can walk into other dimensions. And I think that's a good possibility for Bigfoot and some other cryptids, you know. For a long time I was very Bigfoot's flesh and blood, you know, it's an animal, you know, and God love those people too. Like, it's not like I, you know, bash anybody that does believe that, because the next thing might happen and I'm back to thinking that way. You know what I mean? But just from the stories that I know, especially like the Stan Gordon stuff, like after just all the reports that Stan Gordon has, I'm like, okay, this is an interdimensional being of some sort. You know, there's just so many UFO reports, and, you know, it steps out of a light. It steps out of nowhere and it's there. You know what I mean? So
you got stuff like mind speak and all that. Yeah.
So that's a long-winded answer. So it is, I think they're interdimensional is my official answer.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly, the conversation about the interdimensionality of this phenomenon seems to be gaining a lot of traction recently, especially with, you know, like the congressional hearings and stuff. That term has been thrown around a little bit, and it's being explored. I'm pretty sure even like Tom DeLonge from Blink-182 is kind of promoting or subscribing to that theory. He's got that, you know, quote that he says, you know, I couldn't sleep for like 3 days when I found out all this information, and it seemed to imply that like whatever this is around us at all times, like we can't even see it. And, you know, it makes a lot of sense if there's different dimensions beyond our you know, our physical reality, which seems to be like there very well could be, especially with all the sightings out there that, you know, that could be what we're looking at. I mean, maybe there's also time travelers and ETs from other planets, but whatever this is,
I do love that theory. There's, I won't get into the whole story, but there's a story about a girl in the 1960s, a little girl who this craft, you know, she's out in this field and this craft just lands like 20 feet from her. And she's like, well, this is strange, but she's not scared because she doesn't know what the hell UFOs or aliens are. And so she's like, this is weird. And there's a window and a little head pops out, you know, in front of the window. And she says, it looks like one of Daddy's friends. Like, they looked very nice and they were wearing a helmet. So they took it off and they started talking, but she couldn't hear them because they were inside the craft. And he smiled really big and then took off. You know, and to me, that sounds like, you know, military, or that, you know, they were working on something and that was, you know, a test flight, or time traveler. You know, it's just us from the future type of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Kind of makes me think of Indrid Cold a little bit too. The big smile.
yeah. But, you know, not scared of the girl, but at least how she described it was quite quaint. You know, like, oh, it looked like Daddy. It made her feel good.
Right. Yeah. Jeez. I mean, there's so many stories, and you're an absolute encyclopedia on these stories. I love it. I love it.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Throughout like all your years on this, I mean, it's great that, you know, you've put out so much, and you're reaching out to people and finding out the stories firsthand instead of, you know, looking at some Wikipedia article.
And,
you know, there.
And if I can't talk to the person, which does happen a lot and it sucks, but I do try to find at least like the original newspaper or something. Like, I need to look at something more original than just, you know, something like you said on Wikipedia or whatever. I got to find like the original source. So, you know, there might be more information there that wasn't included in this summarization, you know. So, you know, it really helps hone your researching skills. You know, I first published UFOs over Maine in 2014, but I started writing the book 6-7 years before that. Because again, I'm an idiot, and it takes me a long time to, I don't know how to write a book, especially during that time. So that took a while. And so 10 years after publishing that, which was through a traditional publisher, 10 years later in 2024, just last year, I finally put out the book I wanted to put out in 2014. And it's UFOs over Maine, 10th anniversary edition. The first book was like 130 pages and, 15 encounters. And this new book is over 400 pages and almost 400 encounters. And I completely dismantled that first book and rewrote it from the ground up and re-interviewed people and found hundreds of new stories. And, so 10 years on, or 18 years on from when I first started that first manuscript all those years ago, you just learn so much after each project, after each person you talk to, and I just get so excited with all these stories. And I want people to know that strange things are happening right around you. And your neighbor might be the person I just interviewed, and I don't know. It just, I just think these stories deserve some shine. And if I can get them out there, I'm trying my best,
Yeah, well, you're certainly doing a fantastic job of it. Out of your body of work, what's been your favorite thing that you've worked on so far?
Probably the latest thing, because it's always my favorite thing. But I think the thing that impacted me the most was working with Mike Stevens. I brought him up earlier. This is a gentleman I wrote the book about. All my other books are like a collection of stories from hundreds of people. This book was all about Mike, and it's basically an autobiography about Mike. And he's had a lifetime of encounters from a young age, just like me. And they're still happening to this day. And the gentleman, I think he's 44 now. And he's still having encounters. And I finished the book when he was 40. So it's from infant to 40, this book. And I had numerous long form interviews with Mike. And there were times we were crying together. And because of how traumatic these stories were to him, this wasn't a fun thing for him. It's still not. It's still very scary. There are some things he's come to accept more, and he feels better about it going forward. But he was in a real dark place for a time where suicide might have made more sense than continuing on. And getting to know him that intimately, while I cannot ever compare what it's like being in war, an actual war, it felt like he and I were went through the trenches together. And, so it created this bond with us where, we're obviously friends, but he lives in New Hampshire. I live here. So we don't talk all the time, but, we're not the best of friends where we hang out all the time or anything, but we went through this thing together. And it bonded us for life. And I love him. I love him as a person, and he loves me. And that was just the most impactful, to be able to tell this crazy story about his life with all of these different encounters. And then for him to be so raw and so honest, to be like, and this is how it affected me mentally, that a parallel story, but definitely not as significant as his, was my own mental health journey that is a part of this book too. And how we're so similar, but again, the catalysts are different, but anyways, long story longer, it bonded us, and it's, to this day, it's still very meaningful, and I'm very proud of that book. And, the first chapter is actually really kind of tough to get through. It's about infancy and this thing. He was blue for a while. What? But he was blue for a while. They had to take him to the doctor and everything. But anyways, what I try to do is present, here's all the scientific stuff that it could be, and then here's all this otherworldly stuff it could be. Here they both are, you decide, And so why it's a little hard to get through is that there's a lot of things like nitrates from the water, that his mother's drinking and then breastfeeding him. And, so it gets into a lot of, mumbo jumbo like that. That's a little textbooky to get through. And I typically write how I talk, but once you get past that first chapter, you then fall in love with Mike as a person, in my opinion. And so that was just an amazing experience to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's, yeah, I mean, certainly, forming a strong connection with someone and then, going through all that, chronicling his experiences. I mean, that's, a profound experience for sure.
And that was my life for a year and a half, so it just, it sticks with you,
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm curious about, what's on the horizon for you? Do you have any new books that you're working on, or?
I am. Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff out there that I have my hands in, but the two actual things I can talk about is I love just writing in general, and I've been writing since I was a kid, and I started writing short horror fiction, and so I have one book of short horror fiction that's out there, but I'm working on a new one now. And it's called Darkness Knows Our Names. And it's just a collection of short horror stories. And so that's just always fun to write. And I love going from writing a book like Humanoid Encounters or UFOs over Maine, where it's so fact-based and you have to get all of your citations right. I want to make sure I don't leave anything out. And you have to tell a fact-based story. You can't just make stuff up. And then going to short horror fiction, I'm like, oh yeah, these are really easy to write compared to this stuff. Geez, and I'm busting out stories, one or two a day. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right. This is super fun and a lot easier to write than like nonfiction. So that's a year or two out. And also at the same time, I'm working on another book of strange stories from Maine, but it's all encompassing. It's not just a ghost or UFO or humanoid book. There's also true crime. It includes like all of this stuff, so there's this weird story from the late 1800s about a woman being found in a tree and she was alive. How the hell did she get up there? She didn't know. To this day, she doesn't know. I mean, she's not alive anymore, but it's never been figured out, so it's a bunch of stories like that, just strange stuff. So those are the two I'm working on right now.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, those will be great when they come out for sure. Yeah. One final question before we wrap up here. We've been talking a lot about aliens and, UFOs and that kind of thing, but what's your favorite cryptid from Maine?
Favorite cryptid from Maine? That's a good question. I think I'm gonna have to go with pale crawlers. We have a few pretty creepy stories about pale crawlers, and I think that's my favorite right now. I've got a pretty intense Dogman story that I like, but yeah, I think right now, anyways, it's pale crawlers. I did see my own weird stick figure thing in 2020, so that's just like a personal favorite. But generally speaking, I think pale crawlers. Yeah,
they're certainly one of the creepiest ones for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, this has been a lot of fun, Nomar. Can you share, where to my listeners where they can find you and all of your books
Sure.
online and what have you?
Yeah. So I have my own online store. So if you buy something from there, I'll autograph it. You'll get a bookmark, and that's slevikstore.company.site. If that's too much to remember, just Google my name, Nomar Slevik, Slevik. And it's such a unique name. Just all of my stuff will come up, and just follow whatever links you find. You'll see all my links. You'll see me on Amazon, all that good stuff.
Great. Awesome. Well, we'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah.
And this has been a pleasure, sir.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks again to Nomar Slevik for coming on to the show and hanging out. This was a really fun conversation, and I hope that you take the time to check out his books and all of his work. Those, of course, will be linked in the show notes as always. But anyway, thank you so much again for listening to the show, hanging out with me today. Again, my name's Jeff, and of course, this is the Strangeology Podcast. Now, before we get to any of the end of the show announcements and all that, thank you for bearing with me for the past couple of weeks. I went out, as you know, to contact in the desert out in Indian Wells, California. And I have to say, it was probably one of the more interesting and wild trips that I've taken for the podcast. Maybe even the most, actually, if I'm being honest. And it was a 6-day, well, it turned into 7-day thing. I'm just going to do a quick recap here. I got into town on, Wednesday, and friend of the show, supporter of the show, good buddy, Easton Hawk, came out, met me there, grabbed me from the Palm Springs airport, and we headed to the Renaissance Esmeralda Resort, where Contact in the Desert has been hosted at for the past several years. I think the first time I ever went to Contact, they were telling me that it was back in 2018, that was the first year they did it. So they've been there for quite a while. So we got settled in on Wednesday. Thursday, our mutual friend, Mikey Leisner from the Strange Road, came out. He knows Bill Homan, the Crystal Skulls guy, who I just did an episode with a few, well, I guess it's probably about a month back now at this point. And he was helping him out with some video stuff. And he was like, hey, let's all hang out and, make this a cool trip. We wound up on Thursday after getting all of our badges and everything. We drove out to Joshua Tree National Park, drove through the whole thing, and it was a lot of really pretty scenery, super fun, super nice being out in the desert. Of course, I love it out there. And we wound up just kind of doing a big loop over the course of the afternoon. Came back, and then there was this dinner, and there was a private party with speakers and guests and stuff. So we went up into this private room event upstairs, which was super interesting. You're in there bumping elbows with people that are on, all these shows and these podcasts, and all very well-known people. Got to meet Ryan Wood, who was the last episode in person, as well as Nick Pope was in there. James Fox was in there. It was just, kind of a fly on the wall situation type of thing. And then the rest of the weekend was full of new interviews and just checking out different speakers. Get to sit in on the Josh Gates keynote presentation, which was super fun to see that live and in person. Yeah, so Friday, Saturday, that was just full of interviews and checking things out. I got to give huge kudos to Mikey for helping out with setup for my interviews in the designated media room area. He had a nice camcorder, and so I've got some good video for a number of the interviews I have coming up for the show, and that's going to be awesome. Friday afternoon, I also got to do an introduction for Jason Martell, which was really quite wild. I probably spent half of the morning rehearsing the 30 seconds I was going to say, because it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. So I was a little bit nervous, but he shook my hand as I was getting off the stage and was like, hey man, that was really awesome. And I was like, whoa. So, human moment, right? And then for Sunday, we did the live podcast, and that was super fun. I got to speak with Katie Page of UAP Studies podcast and the Rocky Mountain Research Group. And that episode is going to be posted in sometime this summer. I have a lot, like I said, I did a number of interviews, so I've got pretty much the whole summer schedule is full. And so I've got my work cut out for me with all the editing and everything. So a lot of good stuff coming. So definitely stay tuned for all of that. And then the last day of the event, Monday, I gave my very first lecture presentation, and it was a lot more people than I was expecting to show up. But you know, I think I did pretty well, and I had a few people asking questions, and some people coming up after saying, "Oh, that was a really great job." So thank you. If you're listening to the show, thank you for coming in and checking out the presentation. And if you weren't there, it was a presentation on the ultra-terrestrial theory, and also tying in cryptids like Bigfoot and Mothman to UFOs. And I went over some major case studies like Chestnut Ridge, Mothman, of course, and a few other things. I'll probably turn that into an episode at some point. I had to cut short a lot of stuff. I had 90 minutes to do this, and I wound up, I think, cutting my presentation in half, actually, to fit it into the 90 minutes that I was allotted. Actually, it was more like 80 minutes, and I allowed for some question time. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So overall, Contact in the Desert was a super fun time, and I'm hoping to do it again next year. And yeah, thank you so much, anyone who's listening who checked out my live podcast or checked out my lecture or came to the table and said hello. It was a super fun time. I would say that probably one of the more wild connections I made was Gino from the Y-Files. He's AJ's older brother, producer of the show, and he came up to the table while I was hanging out for a little bit during some downtime with Easton, and he was like, "Hey man, I love your stuff. It's a really big inspiration for what we do at the Y-Files." So that was kind of a holy crap moment for me. So hopefully some collabs will come out of that. And yeah, 2025 has turned into a pretty interesting year for the show. And I think moving forward, we're going to see some really cool stuff. So that's Contact in the Desert in a nutshell. Now, as we're winding down the show, of course, I want to give a huge thank you out there to everyone, as always, who checks out the Strangeology Podcast. If you download it, share it with friends and family, tell the world about it. It helps me out a ton when you do that. And if you're watching this on YouTube, of course, really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like the videos, comment, share it out. It helps boost things out to more people, and maybe there's a chance it gets on the front page. Who knows? But it helps to grow my channel, my podcast to the next level. I really appreciate all of you, especially those of you who have been with me since the beginning. Strangeology really wouldn't be possible without the support of listeners and viewers like you. To any advertisers or companies out there looking to collaborate with Strangeology, or if you'd like to be considered for an interview on the show, if you're an author, researcher, expert, experiencer, you want to share your story, your theories, your encounters with the strange and unexplained, make sure to go to strangeology.com/contact, or you can send an email right to info@strangeology.com. I try to check emails a few times a week, so hopefully we'll be in touch. And just another reminder here to give me a follow over on all of my social media accounts if you're looking for more content from me, or if the podcast is on a little bit of a hiatus and you're not quite sure where I am. I'm usually trying to post over there frequently. It's the schedule's been pretty crazy these days, so I'm posting a little bit less, but we're trying to get back into the swing of things for the summer and the rest of the year. But I do try to post short form video content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can also find me on X, Threads, Substack, Blue Sky. We're pretty much everywhere. And of course, YouTube. Now, if you're looking to support Strangeology, it would really help me out a ton if you leave some really great reviews on your favorite podcatcher where you're listening to the show. It helps out more than you know. If you can leave a 5-star review, that would be super awesome, and I'd appreciate it so much. Other ways that you can support the show is becoming a member on my YouTube channel. I have been in the process of posting all of my back catalog of Strangeology Beyond episodes, which is the exclusive members only portion of the show, sometimes an entirely new research topic or an extended guest interview. It's just under $5 a month, which grants you access to that. And they're also early access and ad-free as well. And I've got to give a big shout out to Alex Dorgan, longtime supporter and friend of the show, for helping me out with getting all the video files ripped for all of the Strangeology Beyond episodes, because it takes a long time to export video files. They're very cumbersome and very big files. So thank you, Alex, so much for helping me out on that front. It is so appreciated. And I've got about 13 or 14 episodes posted as of this episode release over on the YouTube channel, and there's something like 70 or so more to go. So I'm going to try to upload a couple a week as my schedule permits when I have free time. Definitely check that out. If you want to support me over on Patreon, you can do that as well over on patreon.com/Strangeology. Higher tiers there unlock more perks, pretty much like the YouTube channel, early access to new episodes and long format videos, which are also ad-free, and you gain access to Strangeology Beyond. Like I said, those are whole other research topics sometimes, or they're extended guest interviews. Other perks include a 30% off permanent merch discount to my shop, as well as exclusive members only merch. There's also voting power for topics that I cover, behind the scenes content, shout outs, and more. So if you want to join a growing community of like-minded people who love the strange and unexplained, it's a really great place to be. I appreciate the support, and the more of it that I get, the more content that I can create for everyone out there. And to those members out there, you know who you are. I love you so much, and thank you for your continued support. All of this help and support helps me out so much and helps keep the lights on here at Strangeology HQ. Again, that's patreon.com/Strangeology. And speaking of merch, don't forget to check out my shop over at strangeology.etsy.com if you're looking to pick up some Fortean gear. I've got designs on t-shirts, tank tops. Hey, with summer here, you need a tank top for sure. I've also got long sleeves, sweaters, and hoodies for colder weather cryptids, right? We've also got stickers, prints, enamel pins, mugs, tumblers, drink coolers, all sorts of stuff. There's something for everyone. And I've recently updated the shop with a number of new sticker designs, and I have even more coming. I just haven't had a chance to finish up some artwork and drawing out vectors and stuff in my Illustrator program. But I'm always trying to add new stuff. I do all my own artwork, and it's super fun. So definitely check that out. Links will be in the show notes, of course, or you can head over to strangeology.etsy.com, and I appreciate your support so much. All right, well, that's all for me for now for the regular show. Nomar was able to hang out for a little while longer to talk about some more of his experiences and weird high strangeness in the state of Maine. So you're not going to want to miss it. Members, stick with me after this short break, and for everyone else, until the next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and keep it strange. All right, members, welcome back to your exclusive portion of the show, Strangeology